guys, we're back at it with the S14. This time, we have a whole slew of upgrades we're going to be doing on it. We're in the middle of upgrading the cams. So you can kind of see I've got things taken apart. I have my chain zip tied to my gear, and we're going with something not too crazy. Again, just making a nice streetable, bit more responsive, good low end power. So we've got a set of Kelford cams. These are the 188 EZs. Basically, they've got 254 degrees on both the intake and exhaust, and 11.3 mil of lift. So these are straight drop-in. We don't need to do anything crazy with the valve springs or anything of that nature. Kelford recommends that we leave the rev limiter where it is at the factory, and also not to exceed 22 pounds of boost. So not a problem. We're not going to be shooting for the moon on this little setup. We just want to have something that's nice and fun. We really don't need a whole ton of power. So the goal is to make this thing wake up and have good response. So other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing our intake manifold, and we're going to be going with a MazWorks setup on all that stuff. So exhaust, top mount turbo, using a Garrett G series. But in any case, let's get going. Let's finish up our cam install. All right, guys. So with our bolts all loosened up, what we did beforehand is we have this little wood block. We had this made thanks to our neighbor, Travis. He made this for us. So we've got one in there now, just really simple. It wedges itself in there between the chain and the casting on the head. And basically that's gonna keep tension on our chain so that it doesn't move around. On the intake side, because it's got essentially the VTC setup on, we don't have a way to zip tie it. So we've marked it, and we've zip tied our exhaust cam gear in a few different places. So now that we've got our cam gears pulled away, we can go ahead and start unbolting all our bearings and caps, and we can pull the cams out. All right, guys, we are ready to get our cams prepped. So I am just giving them a little bit of a cleaning with acetone, and then we'll get rid of all this lint, of course. We're gonna get all this stuff off, and then we'll blow through our shop air and make sure all our little oiling holes are cleaned up and there's no machining debris. It's always a good idea to do that. Just don't expect to drop everything in and hope that the manufacturer did their job cleaning this thing entirely. So, and then we'll get our assembly lube on there. We can bolt them down. All right, and supplied by Kelford, we have the brand Driven Racing Oil Assembly Grease. We'll go ahead and use this on our cam lobes and also where our caps are gonna go. It's super important to make sure you have this on here so that you don't wipe out your cam bearings. So we've got the cams in, everything is torqued to spec, everything's gone super smooth at this point. So we're ready to bolt everything back in. We're just gonna be waiting on our valve cover to get back from painting, and we're waiting on some brand new grommets for the valve cover itself, along with some new hardware. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, we'll continue on. We'll go ahead and start removing our intake manifold and our exhaust manifold. All right, so we've made a good amount of progress on the S14 Series 1 Zenki. We've got our Hypertune intake manifold installed, and before we did that, it doesn't have any idle air control valve provision, so you can't install anything. We want to make this car as nice as possible, especially on the street. So what we've done is we've installed and welded in a MassWorks flange for the idle air control valve. So we've installed that underneath. We've got some really good access to it, and in case we need to make adjustments, we've modified our harness for all that stuff. So with that installed, we've got we have the Hypertune fuel rail that goes along with the intake manifold, and we've got a set of ID 1300. So originally we weren't planning on running 85. This thing was just going to run 91 and 100 octane, but I talked JJ into E85 just as how plentiful it is and how much more power we can make safely, and you don't have to spend, you know, $9–10 a gallon on 100 octane. So at this point, with most of our fuel system almost complete, we have the Radium late model Nissan fuel hanger that we're going to be installing in this bad boy. I have it over here. But besides that stuff from Radium, we are also using the press-in breather fittings for the valve cover. So we're going to be making a catch can for this bad boy, and because we've relocated the battery to the back, we'll take a look at that in a little bit. We can probably stuff our catch can over here once we've got our piping. We've mounted our Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator off the strut tower, and we have our Radium microglass fuel filter right off the frame rail here too. So everything's tucked in nice and clean. And we've got our mass turbo kit installed. Our Haltech Elite 1500 is almost all the way wired in. We just got to do our sensors for oil pressure, intake air temp. We're going to be using the onboard map sensor that's on the ECU. And of course, we've got all our wiring running from the flex fuel sensor to our Haltech unit. So the plan is for this bad boy, for fabrication, we're going to be making all new charge piping. We're going to get it all powder coated nice black, so it's stealth. We're going to be doing a custom intercooler for it as well, doing a bar and plate, and then once we get all that stuff done, we're basically going to go on the dyno and see what we do with this bad boy. So just to recap, first thing we did was cams. We did a set of Kelford cams in this thing, and then of course cleaned up a bunch of the wiring, did our MassWorks kit, which fit really well. The downpipe that comes with the kit made it to the rest of the exhaust system with no problem. So yeah, I can't wait. It's been some time. We've been waiting for parts. That's how it goes with these big projects, but we're ready. And once we're done with fab, we'll fire this thing up, and it'll be nice to hear it on the dyno. Our S14 Zenki project is all about wrapped up now, guys. Lots of work on this one. We didn't do anything to the engine aside from camshafts. So for the cams, we went with Kelfer 254s, nothing too aggressive. We wanted to keep a nice clean idle and good mannerisms. Didn't want to shift our power band too far up at the high RPMs. Everything came together really, really nice. So JJ went with the gray color and we did the black powder coating, a gloss finish to match the compressor cover on our Garrett. So what we have for a turbo, and we'll recap it again, is the Garrett G30 770. It is using the MazWorks V-band manifold and just really beautiful setup. The MazWorks kit fits perfect. Our exhaust lined up without having to do any fabrication. So kudos to them. Really nice kit. Used their stuff in the past and never disappoints. So we've got a nice big intake coming off our turbo. Did a custom catch can setup, changed the intercooler. So we got rid of the Greddy off-the-shelf intercooler. We went something thicker. This is about 3.5 inch thick, a little wider, and we're using a bar and plate core. So a really cool little setup. You may notice that we've also got rid of the oil cooler that was at the front. We've moved that and made room a little further back for that thing. That way that thing's not right in the front, kind of getting rid of that Japanese look. I don't care for it, and I don't care to heat up our intercooler's air. So we had that oil cooler blocking a good amount of our intercooler real estate. So we've gotten rid of that. And for our fuel system, we ended up doing that radium assembly. So we were able to run a Walbro pump. We've just gone with one. You can run two. And because we're running 85, we did all our necessary precautions. You know, ran a adjustable aeromotive fuel pressure regulator, ID 1300cc injectors with our Hypertune intake manifold and throttle body setup. We're also running the fuel rail that comes along with it. So really beautiful intake manifold. We've got our nice little ports so we can keep our brake booster hose, all that factory stuff. The other thing that you'll see on the video is that we added the MazWorks idle air control valve flange. So that way we can run our idle controls, and this thing has, again, good mannerisms. So this will allow us not to have a constant 12 or 1300 RPM idle speed for all our conditions. So our Haltech Elite 1500 obviously works with all that and controls our base idle. What else do we have, guys? You may notice in the front, for those of you that know the SR, this car and engine was running an external water pump setup. So it's an electric water pump. You won't see the fan setup and the water pump setup, electric fans, all that is controlled with a standalone unit for that water pump. It actually works quite well. Our ECU, our Haltech, is controlling the fans, and we are using the Greddy boost controller that was on it for our boost control setup. So we reused our Greddy blow-off valve for our coils because the SR RB coils aren't all that great. We ended up going with the R35 coils, but using the Tarks ignition coil setup. I like that kit a lot because for the SRs in the front, you have to cut the mounting hole for the ignition coil. Tarks uses 2 screws, really small ones, to hold it secure. The PRP is nice, but the thing I don't like about the PRP is it has a bracket that kind of clips in, but over time with engine vibration, that thing can come loose and a bracket comes out. So I like that Tarks little setup. We modified our little Sylvia ignition coil cover to space up because our R35 coils are sitting up a little higher. But yeah, really, really good. We will throw a comparison up there of how it came in. You know, the last setup, it had a manifold, it had an upgraded turbo. Our bottom end response was pretty good, so we did make a little bit of sacrifices with this bigger setup, but this thing just pulls like a freight train after 4,500 RPM. So with a car this light, it still has pretty good response. It did really well. So it is tuned on 100 octane. It can totally run 91, but it's also set up for flex fuel. So we did run it on 85. We're not positive because the car came from Japan. We don't know what's done to the engine. When we had the camshafts, you know, going in to do the camshaft install, when we had the valve cover off, we could see that it had some sort of June aftermarket head bolts. So it has been apart. You can tell the head gasket's been replaced, but we don't know if any bottom end work was done to it. So we don't want to go too crazy. We ended up doing almost 430 wheel on 100 octane, very conservative timing, only 18 pounds of boost. And we figured that we want longevity out of this thing. We'll leave it there. So on the 85, we're not asking any more out of this thing, so we're not requesting any more timing, we're not adding any boost, but because the 85 is very good, it made another 25 wheel horsepower on just changing the fuel alone. So has full flex fuel capability, and yeah, I can't wait to go and drive it, get some beauty shots of this thing, but it came out absolutely gorgeous. Rounding off the Elite, so we have just the Elite 1500, we're using the built-in map sensor, and we're just using the single wideband controller from Haltech. So all our closed loop is done with that, and yeah, really not a whole lot in the interior. So when we had this thing apart, when we pulled the transmission out of it sometime last year, it has a twin disc clutch, thankfully, so it can handle the amount of power and torque that it's making. And this one, just as a reminder, has that really cool Nismo 6-speed transmission. So yeah, this thing's ready to go out drifting, ready to go out to the road course, and yeah, can't wait for JJ to drive it. So guys, this is what we ended up doing for our catch can. Nothing fancy, but it'll get the job done. And we have it coming off of both sides of the valve covers, and we're using those really bitchin' radium fittings that go in, they press in, really awesome. They swivel if you need them to swivel. That came out really good. We've got our Hyper Tune intake manifold and throttle body setup. We're using the JMD Tubes quick disconnect coupler. This is really cool, makes it easy to remove. You don't need to have a silicone coupler here. And we've mounted our Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator right off here off the strut tower, and you can see the Hypertune fuel rail. So it has good clearance even with the VTC solenoid. That worked out really good. And then of course our R35 coils are underneath our little Sylvia coil cover. And you can kind of look over here. This is where we ended up mounting our external water pump, and we did custom tubing to the engine, and we've mounted our radium fuel filter right off the frame rail. And then of course we have our turbo setup over here. So this came out really nice, really beautiful little setup. We've got our filter coming right behind our headlight assembly, and as mentioned, our Mazworks exhaust manifold, turbine housing's been coated, and then we have our downpipe that runs right off of there. And then here's our intercooler. So actually, let me measure it real quick before I see what it is. But here's our intercooler, guys. This is our bar and plate that we ended up doing, a custom little setup. So it's way more efficient than that trussed Greddy setup that was on there. So pretty sure it is, I don't remember, it's been a while. I think it's 4-inch thickness, but I'm not positive. I'll confirm, but we stuck whatever we could, the biggest thing that we could in there to have a good amount of heat soak, to get rid of a bunch of heat soak. So the bigger the intercooler you have as far as thickness, it'll help take away some of that heat. But these cores are really efficient. So of course, if you go too big, you know, you could start having inefficiencies, but this core is a really good setup. But yeah, that covers it under here. Yeah, really cool little setup. All right, so here it is on 100 octane. 91, we'd probably bring down the boost by 2 or 3 PSI. Ignition timing, we'd leave alone. But you can see these 4 cylinders, you know, even with a decent sized wastegate. So we're running the Tile MDR, a 44 mil wastegate. You can see how it still has a little bit of boost creep in it as it goes up. So pretty common for the 4 little cylinders to have a little bit of boost creep, but really impressive. The power and torque, mainly the torque, is nice and flat. It climbs up a little bit with the boost, but as soon as we're past 45, this thing is just a banshee and it just keeps going. I actually had 2 guys in the trunk, a bunch of VHT to try and keep this thing from spinning, you know, because it's light, and because of the alignment settings, you know, there's got a negative camber. We didn't have a whole lot of contact surface with the drum on the dyno, so we had to throw a bunch of weight back there, but really nice. So E85, I'll throw it up there. It's a little ugly, the chart, because we started having some weird TAC signal pickups with the dyno, but we ended up making like another 25 peak horsepower and more bottom end power. So natural with the E85 with no other changes, it's going to make more power on its own because of the cooling effect. You're burning more fuel, and all that will help, especially on a turbocharged engine, make more power. But yeah, this thing just, you can just see it just keeps pulling. Nice flat torque curve for the most part. All right, so blue is E85. What I did is I kind of zoomed in to our chart, because you can see here we started getting some slip, and then our TAC signal started getting wonky here and weird. But you can see just fuel alone, it makes more exhaust energy, so it actually makes a little bit more boost, made like another pound throughout the entire power band. And you can see that on its own we picked up like another 25 a wheel and torque just with the fuel change alone. So, but we'll leave it there for now. We don't want to go too crazy on this thing because we don't know if it's got any, built bottom end components or if it's stock. So we'll leave it here for now. That turbo's got way more in it, and our fuel system has more in it too. So this thing easily could get us probably, into the 550s, maybe even 6, but I think that's a crazy amount of power for a chassis this light. It'd be fun nonetheless to throw it around with that kind of power. All right. All right, so we're in JJ's S14 and we're gonna go for a little drive. See how this bad boy does, see how our drivability is, see how the power comes on. Don't mind the popping and clicking with the two-way. Yeah, no traction. It's good. Oh yeah, it's a party on wheels right there. Lightweight. This thing nailed it. This is perfect for drifting. This thing is gonna do really, really well. Definitely, you can tell it's set up for drift. Just wants to go as soon as you get into that 4,500 RPM range. Sounds great. Super crisp throttle response. Oh, this thing's gonna be a blast. So the car from Japan came with like a ARC little boost gauge. We got some DEFI water temp gauges, all in Celsius, and kilopascals for boost and oil pressure. This thing's really cool. If JJ ever wanted to consolidate, just have one gauge. Super easy to do with a Haltech. We would just need to wire up our oil temp. We already have oil pressure going to the ECU. Water temp, it's already going to get it off the factory coolant temperature sensor.